This is a kindergarten art class at Del Mar Harvard Elementary School in University City. These kids are making the popular jewelry box out of popsicle sticks for Mother's Day.
But this has to be colored first. That's why I want you to get these done.
This art project promotes creativity, but these kids are also developing skills, such as the very important working nicely with others.
When I call your table, I want you to carefully bring your box and the lid over here.
Public kindergarten education, its philosophies, its methods were first implemented here in St. Louis in the late 1800s. And back in the 19th century, St. Louis had a national reputation for their excellence in public schools. This was due in part because of the dedication and hard work of Susan Blow, a pioneer in early childhood education and the mother of the kindergarten. Susan Elizabeth Blow was born in St. Louis in 1843. She grew up in the Carondelet neighborhood, and she came from a long line of people who made a lasting impact on this city, and she would be no different. Her maternal grandfather, Colonel Thornton Grimsley, proposed the development of Lafayette Park, which today holds the title of oldest park west of the Mississippi. Her father, Henry Blow, and uncle, Taylor Blow, played key roles in freeing Dred Scott and his family. Henry Blow was also heavily involved in local, state, and national politics. In fact, he has a school and street named after him. Susan grew up surrounded by people who made a difference, but she also grew up in a time when women didn't have many choices, and their education rarely went beyond elementary school. But Susan was intelligent, a bookworm even, and her father was determined to see her educated.
Henry was a different breed. He was proud of his daughter, and he wanted to see her have the best education a person could get. Not a girl, a person could get.
Susan studied in New Orleans and attended a finishing school in New York. She had tremendous exposure to the world, but she always came back home.
She traveled in Europe. She had plenty of resources. And at the same time, she came back to St. Louis and substitute taught in the public schools. She really had a sense of mission about teaching and about the kinds of functions that schools should serve in a democracy.
There was a time when young children didn't attend school. They stayed at home with their mothers.
A kind of expectation that women would become the primary child nurturers within the home. And so the whole process of child rearing became much more private in the 1840s and 50s, and children were taken out of public schools at young ages at that point.
But Susan Blow understood the importance of educating children at a young age, and she believed that creating a stimulating environment where learning could take place was crucial to a child's development. While visiting Germany, Susan studied the teaching methods of Friedrich Froebel, and she instantly knew that St. Louis needed to adopt his style of learning. Kindergarten, meaning children's garden, was new and controversial, but she was determined to introduce it to the St. Louis public school system. What impressed Susan about Froebel's methodology was that he recognized that in order to develop a child, you must first understand the child. The key to Froebel's method was the learning materials, which they called gifts. These gifts were designed to mask constructive work as play. Susan brought Froebel's gifts back to St. Louis and presented them to William Harris, the superintendent of St. Louis Public Schools. And fortunately, Harris also saw the importance of early childhood education.
The significance of the kindergarten for Harris and Blow was that the kindergarten was that transitional year between, well, in educational terms, between education in the family and education in the community. Now, Harris wanted to extend this from the age of 3 to the age of 5 to really capture children in early childhood and give them plenty of time to get ready for regular school, first grade. But there wasn't a lot of support for that, and people started to complain about using public money to educate children when they should be in their own homes being educated. There was that whole question of younger children.
Despite some lack of support, Harris sent Susan to New York for further kindergarten training in 1873. That September, the first public kindergarten in the country opened at the DePere School in the Carondelet neighborhood.
They introduced what were called Froebel's 9 gifts into these kindergartens. Harris gave Susan Blow the go-ahead to begin training teachers and to run a kindergarten herself. And they were so pleased with the success of the first kindergarten that they began to expand the program. And eventually, by probably the 1880s, it had reached across the city and thousands of children were in kindergarten classrooms.
Susan's kindergarten not only expanded here in St. Louis, but it spread across the nation. Teachers from all over the country were coming to St. Louis to receive formal kindergarten training directly from Susan Blow. There were some private kindergartens established in the United States before the DePere School, but it was Susan Blow who started the kindergarten movement in public schools and made it available and free to all children.
She was passionate about the kindergarten and about, it wasn't simply a typical kind of upper-class benevolence toward the poor. She really believed that kindergartens were a mediating institution for children of all different classes, and that every public school should have a kindergarten, and that kindergarten should serve every neighborhood in the city. So she was an unusual person in that regard.
By the time she died at age 72 in 1916, Susan Blow had lived to see the experiment she began in a St. Louis classroom become the standard in schools across America.